Alright, so welcome. This video right here is going to be for a Spartan Blades Akribis that you see right here, but I just want to talk a bit before we get into things. So you heard me talk about the big three in the knife game. You have Strider, you have Chris Reeve, and you have Hinder. So they're basically the benchmark knives of the high-end production market. Every high-end production knife out there is going to be put up against at least one of them. Can't help it, they basically set the bar. And at about 400 plus for each, we're not talking about cheap stuff here. It's high for sure, and people do level complaints about each of them. But I do see where the price comes from for each. So what exactly makes them worth the cash? Let's start with Chris Reeve. The Sebenza's been around forever, and everyone knows about their tight tolerances. The Hinder XM18, same thing, and they're up here at sixth generation. The Strider right here, this one's an SMF. Tough, timeless design, killer warranty. People complain about their build quality, but I say either pick up a later Strider or find one of those new M Striders out there. Flawless fit and finish on those. At least on par with the CRKs. And that's just one of the points I'm trying to get across here. It's not always about build quality, it's about history as well. And I mean that differently from most. I'm never going to go tell you to go out there and buy like a buck 110 or something just because it's a part of knife history. Matters a bit, but not that much for me. For each of these three, the design has history. They've been around for a while. They've been given the time to grow, the time to up their quality, to change, to do some trial and error, and just improve in general. They were the ones that had all the kinks ironed out, and they were the ones that have been strong enough to stand the test of time. And all of that is just kind of associated with the name. So that's kind of what you're paying for there. So where the hell am I going with all this? So Spartan Blades is a company that would kill to be able to stand toe-to-toe with them. And they're trying hard too. This one in particular, it's aimed directly at the Chris Reeve Sebenza. Foreign name at all. But it comes up short. When I handle this Akribis right here, I just can't see where the price comes from. This is a design from a relatively new company. Build quality is good, but nothing exceptional. Materials are on par with them, but not nearly as well used. So, with all that said, it's pretty damn bold to price this one above any of the big three. And the thing is, I don't think the Akribis holds its own against the rest here. This upgraded version with the CF scales right here, this one retails for 490 bucks. Normal version with just textured black G10, that one was 455. In that range, you're directly competing with the big three. And I don't think this is a knife that earns that kind of price. First up, take a step back. Let's look at this design overall right here. So this is where most knives start and end. Whether you like to admit it or not, you buy with your eyes. I don't see this one ever being a timeless design. I mean, doesn't this one just kind of look awkward to you guys? Like, there's something off-putting here. And I think a lot of that has to do with the blade to handle ratio here. You're looking at a 5-inch frame right here with a 3.5-inch blade. You can complain about blade to handle ratio on the Striders too, but what people actually mean is edge to handle ratio. Just let me close this up. The Striders waste no space back here. So, you see how that tip right there went all the way to the end of the frame? I can't say the same about this one. Check this out. Perfect centering, by the way, but what I really want you to see is just how much empty space is back here. All this in the back right here, like this back portion right here, all of that is just wasted. It's like someone put a small 21 blade in a large 21 frame. And instead, they occupied this back end right here with this huge chain link style fastener here. And I don't know if I agree with that. This thing is actually doing a lot back here. It's the lanyard hole. It's also the only other thing besides the pivot holding this knife together. It has this blasted texture, so it's a nice thing to grab onto when you get it out of pocket. And it's also the only thing that's really going through the full-length black G10 backspacer back here. It's something different, and I will say it is interesting, but I also think this is actually what ruins the design, at least in my opinion. Because it's the limiting factor here. Like, you combine this with the backspacer right here, and you get about this much of the frame available. Everything else back here, all of that's taken up by the G10 backspacer and this huge thing back here. So you can kind of see right there. So that's not much. And what can you fit back there? This exact small, awkward sliver of a blade that you see right here. I mean, seriously, just look at it. That's barely taking up any of the frame on the inside. And hell, the entire thing looks like it's offset. Like someone just took this and shifted it up a little bit. It doesn't seem like it goes with it. I'm not a fan of this blade at all. There is just no world where this blade fits with this frame design-wise. I mean, just look at the shape of this frame right here. Just close it up. Isn't this just begging for a nice, substantial and Singo style blade? Like imagine this one right here, scaled up to fit in this blade right here. This frame right here. Doesn't that just kind of fit perfectly inside? That would use the lines of the frame perfectly. So just think about how it will look here. Like just kill that thumb ramp, keep the jimping up here, and you'll have a nice classy swooping line that goes all throughout the top here. They can even keep the backspacer too. I never understood the appeal of flow-through design. I always loved the full backspacer. They just decided to make the backspacer a problem here by burying the blade in the frame so deeply. Imagine it being something like this. Let's say it's like this, and then it just kind of swoops into a frame right here. I mean, it's already a big knife. You're not going to make it carry better by burying the blade deeper. So you might as well give me a full-size blade as well. The worst part is, this has the potential to be a very classy frame, but the blade just kind of spoils the profile of it. The thumb ramp up here, it breaks up the top line. It's strangely narrow towards the front right here as well. And I like recurves, but this one just doesn't make much sense to me. In general, I like recurves and harpoons that give rather than take. And what I mean by this is I like it when those things are incorporated into the design. I like it when the harpoons and recurves add material to a blade rather than subtract from it. So it's like if this one had like a bigger recurve, I want it to be something like this. If it had a harpoon, I want it to be something like this. Because sometimes you go and you request like a harpoon and a recurve from a maker. You just take one of their standard pre-cut blades and they'll just grind this part right here off and then leave the front right here, and that's going to be your harpoon. Or they'll just take the middle part of your blade, kind of like what they did here, just grind into it. You just take away material until it looks like a recurve. The problem with that is it's lazy, it looks bad, and it just makes your blade smaller than it should be. And again, they did just that over here, as if the blade wasn't small enough already. They took a blade blank, ground too much in the middle right here, and called it a recurve. I know it's intentional, but it looks like a mistake. Also, the recurve here is so slight it almost doesn't even matter. It helps with cutting a bit, but honestly not that much. It would have looked better with just a straight edge here or something like that. And you know what? Maybe you're thinking that looks don't matter. In that case, you're probably gone by now. We're like 8.5 minutes in. I don't think you'd stay otherwise. But in case you're still here, let's move on to more concrete things. Blade on this one right here is in CPM S35BN. Says right here on the front. And I honestly think it would have looked better if they just put their Spartan Blades logo up here. But again, we're assuming looks don't matter. If you're watching this, you probably know all about S35BN. Same thing Chris Reeve and Hinder uses. It's a very decent super steel, and it has what they call their meteorite gray finish. So it's kind of like a coating. It's like a dark gunmetal type of finish, and it's the same thing on the liners back here as well. The blade is in this very pointy drop point, and it's a tough blade too. It's flat ground, and it feels very thick behind the edge, kind of like a hinderer. And it keeps that up all the way to a point as well. And up top, you also get this skinny swedge up here that runs almost the full length of the blade. Put that all together, and you get a very stabby blade right here. It also picks up fingerprints like crazy. But you need to be doing something crazy here to snap the tip off of this one. And it's a very strong, defined point as well. I already touched on the recurve. The end here does not clear the plunge grind. And this one has been resharpened, so Yeah, it's not mine, it's just on loan, and it's not really sharpened all that well. You can see it kind of rubbed on the thumb studs, but that's not on Spartan. You're not seeing the original edge here, but what you can kind of see is there's some unevenness in the back right here. And it also has this thumb ramp up top over here. It feels good in hand, and that jimping, it grabs you back when you go to use it. It's not perfect, it'll hurt you a bit with any real hard cutting, but it's still better than most. So I'll give them credit for that. It gives you more leverage on the blade overall, and I think it's well done. At least, like, ergonomically. So moving back, the frame on this one is in some kind of gray area here. It's either a thick liner lock, or it's a frame lock with some carbon fiber scale overlays. I'm not going to argue semantics here. Whatever it is, it's probably my best part. It's not a perfect frame, but it does get close. Finish work is nice and clean. It's consistent as well. The carbon fiber here, it's completely void free and beautifully polished. I'm just moving it around in the light right here. You can see the quality of it. It's also held in by 3 screws on each side. And that's kind of what's keeping it on there. It's also covering up the pivot as well. The carbon fiber scales, they're slightly undersized on the edges right here. And it's also rounded here to kind of expose the titanium, and the titanium's also rounded. So it kind of gives you a contoured effect to the whole thing, even though it's mostly slab-sided. Towards the end, the scales leave this part right here just bare metal, and I think it's a pretty clean look. And back here, again, you have that chain link fastener looking thing back here. One thing you might not notice right away, let me see if I can get it right. Yeah, you can kind of see Spartan Blades written right on that. Very subtle branding. It's a big deal for some. It's kind of like a take it or leave it kind of thing for me, but it's nice that they at least have it there. Anyways, this clip right here, it's held by that fastener in the back. Looking at it this way, you might think it's reversible, but it really isn't. There's a cutout in the titanium right here that kind of holds this thing and keeps it from moving. Also, the scale over here is cut a bit differently, because if you look over here versus over here, it's just slightly different. So, I'm not really a big fan of the way this clip looks, at least right over on this part. It looks a bit flimsy, honestly, but I will say it does work well. Gives you a good amount of ramp. It's tall enough for pretty much every pocket I've tried, and it's very well done. At least with these scales right here, it lands on the smooth carbon fiber, so it actually pockets very well. Go to get out of pocket, and that big screw right there, it's a nice, slightly textured place for you to grab onto. And nice tension on that clip too. But the thing is, since it's kind of long and thin over here, it does move around quite a bit. Not nearly as much as a normal Spyderco wire clip, but I can live with it. It's not perfect, but I can deal with it. In hand, I do say the clip is very well placed. Doesn't get in your way at all. Ergonomics in general are actually very decent here. Only one hot spot, and I'll say it's a pretty bad one, but not really serious enough to be a complete deal breaker, and that's this part right here. So the way this works is after the thing moves, this part, the lock bar moves in, and that's the liner as well. And it leaves this piece of carbon fiber right here just kind of left hanging. So even if you put a moderate amount of pressure on that part, and you can kind of feel that scale digging into you. I think it would be fixed if they just trimmed the scale back a bit, like over by the finger choil part, but as it is right now, you really do feel this part the most. And I think if they actually did trim it back, it would give you a nice sort of rounding effect like the rest of the frame. It's something you feel in most grips. Not when you're like cutting paper or anything like this. I'm talking real use right here. But that's the only real thing I can point to and say it's a functional issue. In hand, it's very good in a saber grip. You have your thumb right here on the thumb ramp. And this part back here, it just kind of gives you some nice support back here for your palm. You probably get that scale issue the worst right here, but I will say it is probably the best grip for this knife though. Pinch grip works as well, and you do sometimes feel that relief cut for a lock bar in the back, depending on where your fingers land. Hammer grip is good up here too. Reverse grip, again, the scale's kind of digging into your pinky, but it's still decent. You can do thumb over or thumb on top. I prefer thumb on top. Thumb on top. Both of them feel great. Another thing is there's actually no dead space here. If you need to get closer to the edge, you can just kind of choke up a bit right here. It's not perfect, but it's still very usable. It's not uncomfortable, but I won't actually say it's comfortable. While I'm up here, just another small issue I need to point out is at the end of the lock bar right here. Feels like it needs a chamfer. That lock bar there just sticks up just a bit too much. You don't touch it normally, so I'm not really going to say it's a real problem, but it does feel like an oversight. And I don't really like that. Lockup on this one is very solid. Absolutely no up and down blade play here. And opening it is easy too. Well-sized thumb studs, decently smooth action. Unlocking it, just as easy. You can kind of see that the lock bar right here is just barely taller than the other side. It's not in the way where you can feel it in hand, and that's, you know, that's kind of important for me, but you also have some scallops that are taken out on the inside, so to give you some grip without being too aggressive. So you go to close it, D10 hits the tang very late right here, so you can kind of see the angle. So you do feel that D10 ball most of the time. The thing is though, they thought this through and added a D10 ramp on the inside right here. Yeah, you can kind of see it right there. So that bump from D10 is a lot smaller than it could have been. Last thing I want to touch on right here is probably going to be build quality. And honestly, it's not all that great here. Remember how I said this one was aimed squarely at the Sebenza? Well, they tried to replicate that Chris Reeve bushing pivot here, and on this one at least it did not turn out well. So the idea behind it on Sebenza is to have a pivot that you don't need to worry about at all. You can screw the thing down as much as you want, and you'll still get the same action. The issue is, to pull that off right, you need top-end tolerances. And Spartan Blades is not a company that I think can put out that level of quality just yet. I mean, just take a look at this backspacer right here. I see it right there. There are gaps that run all along the sides of it. It's on the other side as well, but you kind of have a lock bar kind of in the way. So you can easily pass light through. That means there are lots of gaps on the side. And you know what? Akribis is a Greek word that means sharp or precise. Okay, Akribis is a Greek word that means sharp and precise. And I can't say it lives up to that name. With tolerances like that, you can't pull off a good bushing pivot. And I think that's pretty evident here. Because this one feels much more like a normal pivot than anything else. It's possible to over-tighten it to a point where you lose your action, and sometimes you can't. And that's something you can't really do with a Sebenza. On a side note, I will say they're using good quality hardware here, but to get it where it needs to function right, there's no avoiding side-to-side play. There's side-to-side play when it's locked, side-to-side play when it's unlocked. So there's a price where all of this is just forgivable. And I will say we're way past that point. Because it all comes back down to the price for this one right here. Because if you're going to price yourselves this high, you invite these kind of comparisons. I can't talk today. So anyways, after all that, after I've talked about all this for so long now, I'm still left wondering where that $490 or hell, even that $445 went. Because I'm sure not seeing it here. Chris Reeve did more and they invented the frame lock, for Christ's sake. Like, and did they start off in the mid 400s? No. And they're still not at $445 for a base model. They started off where they should have. They slowly improved, they worked their way up, they built their fan base, and they earned their price. They earned it through years of improvements and innovations. This knife right here, I'll compare this to like a kid wearing his dad's clothes. Like, is it the same on the outside? Same steel, same materials? I mean, it is the same clothes after all, but you know what? Compare that to the dad. The one that wears, because when you put them side by side, one of them wears the clothes a lot better. and the other one has a lot of growing to do before they can finish the same shoes. This feels like a $300 knife trying to pass for a $490 one. Even at $300, I've leveled the same kind of complaints here. It's just kind of amplified in this review because of the inflated price. Overall, it seems like they just rushed into the high-end market. I see a lot of potential here, but I also see a lot of rookie mistakes. If they want to play in the major leagues, they need to get some experience and they need to earn their stripes first. I do like them as a company though, so you're going to see a lot more about Spartan Blades on this channel. I see a good American company with a lot of potential. And maybe in another 10 years, they will be the next Chris Reeve. I mean, who knows? That's a long ways out though, but I think they can get there with the right guidance. Right now, they might talk big, but they've just yet to prove themselves to me. I've tried most of their folder lineup, and there are definitely some standouts in there, but everything so far has been sort of hit or miss. The Akribis is pretty middle of the road for me. If you're not as picky as me and you don't mind overpaying, you'll be very happy using this. It's a very functional knife. Just don't expect perfection. I think I said all I had to here. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.